My name is Jon Kleineman. I'm about to blow your mind. Those of you at home, I really want you to think about this. It's going to take a little while for you to really think about it. This is especially going to be hard to accept if you've been training in a martial arts or defensive tactics system out there. The way things happen in real life and the way we train them very often are entirely different, and that leads to a whole pile of you-know-what out there in the industry, which allows us to be led or misled in many different directions. Because a lot of us basically at the end want to feel secure. We want something to assuage our fears, to keep us sleeping at night, to make believe also at the same time that we can drop a bunch of people in front of our girlfriend in the middle of a parking lot. Unfortunately, that leads to a lot of misinformation there as to why things happen and the way things happen. So let's take a look at some holds that don't really happen in real life. The infamous wrist grab. So for example, Jorgen comes here, and Jorgen, we take a bow. Yes, that's very important first because that happens in the street all the time. We take off our shoes, etc. And Jorgen grabs my wrist. Good, and I kill him. I do something like this, or I do something like this. And a lot of people say, well, you know, what if it's a woman? She's gonna be, you know, she could be abducted like this. Do you really think a woman's gonna be abducted by grabbing a wrist like this? Do you really think, even in the case of taking a child and throwing the child in the van, that I would do this, I would do this. I would take him and I would throw him in the van, etc. Or I would pick him up while they're kicking and screaming. I wouldn't get somebody to go where I go by going like this. Okay? Now, the same thing. Choking me from the rear. So he chokes me from the rear. Again, this is always part of everybody's nightmare. Somebody's going to come up behind him. I've never ever seen this happen. And I've never seen it in the context that it happens. In the case here, I don't know why you'd want to defend yourself against a massage therapist, but again, this is not what you would face. So the way most people are training it is, again, you do this, and I turn around and I break your fingers, etc., or I do this, or I kick you in the groin. And the more I put in the background, helicopters, camo, dark faces, etc., and I scream really loud, the more that's sold to everybody as individuals. If I say that I'm a 10th degree black belt, or I say that I'm a former special ops, first of all, I wonder how many special ops people ever had to be choked like that in a real situation. So what we're talking about ultimately is reality. And to me, self-defense has to be grounded in reality. In the case of a choke, he's going to choke me now like a martial artist. The first thing is he's going to stand at arm's distance and he's going to choke me. And then again, I'm going to do something really cool, elbow him in the face, etc. Now, even if that was the right thing to do, even if that was the correct thing to do, those things wouldn't happen. So let's say when somebody chokes me, I knee him in the groin. He chokes me, and I knee him in the groin. And he chokes me, and I knee him in the groin, and he dies every time. Unfortunately, what would happen before that is there would be some verbal altercation. He'd be pushing me, he'd be again, and I'd be kind of subservient. The next thing I know, all of a sudden he'd be choking me, etc., and I'd be like this. Very good. Now, the furthest thing from my mind at that point is a knee to the groin. And you could train it like that, and you could do this, but that's still not going to be able to make you knee him in the groin because I'm going to be fighting for balance. You understand? So until I've experienced that type of pressure, and now I'm not talking about the making faces part. I'm not talking about the angry verbal abuse part. That's also part that people get carried away. The part where I feel like, oh my God, his hands are really on me and I'm moving backwards. That's the part I'm talking about. And I think that's the part that's very much misunderstood in the self-defense world. Because we're training things in holy shit moments and reacting them like they're everyday moments. Again, a choke from the side. I'm walking down the street one day and again, he chokes me from the side and I hit him in the groin, hit him in the elbow, hit him there, and I throw a couple of knees in him. I didn't even look at him. And again, if we put special forces in there and name XYZ country that's been in war, we would buy that for all the euros, all the dollars that we can spend. And that's how we've been taken. And what we've done is create an industry that does that. So that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Until you train it alive against a resisting opponent, because you know what's going to happen? The first thing I start to do when I start to choke him and I start to move him and he starts to do whatever he's going to do whatever he's going to do, I'm going to fight him. And if we don't train that way, that's not going to happen. Now, how do we train that progressively? So the idea is, first we learn how to defend a sucker punch. First we learn how to defend tackles. First we learn how to do those things, and then we start putting them together. So every hold that we're training, when he starts to defend that, I'm going to combat that with a different type of resistance until it really starts to look like a fight. So for example, let's do that in slow motion. In the case that I start to defend the choke, he's moving me backwards, and I'm stuck back here, and maybe I'm driven into the wall, etc., and I start to create a little bit of space, and now he starts to punch me. So maybe I eat that punch, etc., and now I'm in there, and now we're in there, and now we're fighting. That's what a real fight looks like. Now let's go backwards. He chokes me, and I go like this, and I push him all the way down to the ground. Go all the way down to the ground because I said so. Yes, and I hold him there. And I stand over him, and then I pull out my gun, and I kill everybody in the room. Do you understand what kind of, I don't want to use words like that on this video, is out there? Now, one makes me feel really good because I can drop him with the touch of my fingers. The other one might not make me feel so good in the beginning, but after I've trained it, and I've fought over it, and I've lost, that really builds my competence and my confidence. Because true competence comes from competence. Now people say, I don't know if a woman or a small person should train like that. Well, how do you propose they train? You propose they train by going over pressure points and things like that. The first time that they experience this and fail at it, they'll start to work better on their de-escalation and their survival skills because they'll know that's not a situation that they want to be in, and they'll know what they can get into and what they can get out to, and sometimes you're going to have to improvise. In the case of a choke, again, I'm not always going to be dealing with a symmetrical type of violence in which we're both standing over here like so, or I'm even pinned against the wall. He could just as easily be pinning me over here, and this is much harder to operate. And I might have to think outside the box. I might think about picking up a glass and hitting him over the head and stuff like that. Not just about eye gouging and biting his face off. Self-defense is, again, about survival. It's not a sport. It's not glorious. It's not anything that we have to obsess about. It's a part of our normal existence. Since the dawn of time, people have had a need to defend themselves, their homes, and their families. Somehow we've forgotten that because we no longer hunt for our food. We no longer have to do certain things are provided for us. So we've created a culture that somehow obsesses over this, that self-defense is about me standing over you like this at the end. And it really isn't. It really is about going home. And anybody has the capacity to do that. It's ingrained in our DNA. It's our ability to find that within ourselves and be able to impart it. But the further that we go away from that and we settle things with just physical answers and pressure points and hitting the groin and poking the eyes, etc., the further we're going to go of what it is really to defend ourselves.